Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Trees podcast with Charlie and Justin. This is episode 151. And Justin, we're actually a lot later than normal. It's Saturday night, but we always make the effort. And I shouldn't say effort because effort implies that it may not be fruitful.
Right.
But we always give the guarantee of an episode every Saturday. We've done it for almost 3 years now. Got to keep it rolling.
3 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, we could almost say 3 years. That's insane.
So, what's new in your life other than the weather getting colder, which we're both not fond of? But I feel like that's like the cliche place for us to always start is the weather.
Yeah. So, I mean, the cold weather is no fun, but I do enjoy, the landscape where I work and stuff is gorgeous. So
somebody brought that to my attention today, which I don't know. I'm like completely aloof to stuff like this. I just probably not a good thing to be like this, but I'm so focused on other things that sometimes I don't really soak in surroundings, and I'm not very
stop and smell the flowers.
Yeah, certainly. I'm not very I don't know what the word is, like observant, I guess, for lack of a better term. I'm not very observant with things. But someone pointed out, a client that I was training this morning talked about all the leaves changing colors and how beautiful it looks. And I looked outside the windows of the gym and was like, oh my goodness, it does look really nice. And I said, but I have a very difficult time finding any like affection for stuff like that because for me, it's kind of twofold. Number one is leaves cannot be beautiful to me in any shape or fashion because I'm always raking them at my house now or previously. Growing up, it was like constantly raking leaves because we lived in like a suburban area with a lot of woods and trees and stuff. So it was kind of a pain. And then the other thing, moreover, is the fact that everybody knows what fall leads into, which is winter. So like, I can't enjoy fall because people always say how they love fall and they love hoodie weather, and there's like this part of me that just looks at it as like an antecedent to like hell. Like I know what's coming. It's like, yeah, the weather, like maybe for some people, 50 or 60 degrees is preferred to like 80 or 90. But I just know that 50 or 60, especially where we live, is going to turn into 20 and 30 and below very, very quickly. So
yeah, and then that dreaded white stuff piling up.
Yes, certainly. And to be honest, this sounds kind of like a paradox, but I actually don't mind snow. I just hate the cold.
Right.
Like I know that some people hate snow because it's dangerous, like trying to drive in it and maneuver it. I know that some people actually tolerate the cold fine. It's just there's a fear factor of the snow. Yeah, it's like treacherous, and they don't like it. But for me, it's the opposite. I mean, not that I enjoyed the snow being on the ground, because obviously everything gets delayed, and you have to slow down a lot quicker when you go places. But for me, it's more about the actual physical temperature. Like, I'm a huge baby when it comes to the cold. I don't know. I've always been like that. But, like, for some reason, I can also tolerate a good degree of cold, no pun intended, when I'm trying to be cold.
Yeah, like taking cold showers.
Yeah, or like an ice bath or something. Like I suffer through it, but I can do it a lot better than most people. But when it comes to just like your normal temperators,
being outside in the cold is no fun.
Yes, it actually is.
I don't think anybody likes it. And anybody that says they do, I think they are delusional.
Yeah, like crazy.
Because I mean, unless you're dressed exactly right, a part of your body's gonna feel that almost chafed if you've been out in the cold for so long. I don't like that part of it, but I don't mind the winter if it wasn't frigid. Yeah,
there's definitely some mental changes that occur for a lot of people in winter because you talk about like seasonal depression,
you get
or seasonal affective disorder. SAD, I think, is the correct terminology there. But it's darker all the time because of daylight savings time and the days getting shorter anyway. Which it's just really like disheartening when it's dark out and it's 5.
Take this, I agree, but take this approach at it, because this is kind of one look I've tried to do over the years, is I welcome the, daylight savings time whenever we get darker earlier, more hours of dark, because I know in a few short months, we're going to be that much more excited for earlier sunrises, later sunsets, in the warm weather, and the change, like the change that we know inevitably is coming now.
Yeah.
is also coming again in a few months.
And I always make note of like the winter solstice, so the longest day of darkness, I believe it is. That's the winter solstice, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
So I always make note of whatever day is the lengthiest amount of darkness that we get, because then like I can tell myself, It's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, we're getting better.
It may be 10 extra seconds of whatever is considered brightness or daylight, but the threshold is slowly scaling back on the darkness end, and we're going to get more light. So that's something to look forward to. But it's also, at least for me, talking about fall leading into winter, and then you could look at winter positively leading to spring. It's kind of like you don't want to get caught up in a mentality of always looking forward.
Yeah.
And being focused in the here and now, because I know that that's one thing that I hear a lot about and I read a lot about from people that are far beyond my level of intellect and success, is they talk about the importance of consciousness and being self-aware of what you're doing right now, how you're doing it, all those sorts of things. That's something that you and I have talked about previously on the podcast, and sometimes I lose sight of it because I think that one of my downfalls, and it's actually, it's probably a good thing, honestly, but it's bad too, is the fact that I'm very type A and structured. Like we talk about that a lot. And what that is it allows me to be very planned and measured in how I go about things and very schedule oriented. But I'm constantly thinking about the next move, that it's difficult sometimes for me to like scale back, pump the brakes a little bit, and be focused more on where I'm at as opposed to where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah. I struggle with that too. And I think a lot of like, kind of to tie it into my normal theme anyways, like my normal talking points of weight loss and that stuff is, I think that's where a lot of people's perceived failure comes into place, because if you get stuck in the what's coming or where your journey's gonna go, if you have too much foresight, because we talk about looking down the road.
Yeah.
But if you have too much foresight and you're looking too far out ahead, you're not paying attention to the right now.
Yeah.
And the right now is where it's going to get you to where you're going to go.
Well, I wrote this piece one time. It was called Micromanaging Your Way to Success.
Yeah.
And essentially, the article talked about how you're going to, if you like, it's kind of like goal setting. Like, you can set a big goal and never reach it. But if you set a bunch of small goals, you will eventually wind up where you want to get to, because there's like a higher degree of accountability and stuff. So I haven't been able to like take this and transfer it into all aspects of my life. But I remember a while ago, you and I talked about how I was able to form that conscientious mentality and be focused and be present with trainings.
Right.
Where when I go through a workout with someone, like specifically with my athletes, because that's what constitutes a large majority of my client base, like I focus on right now with them. Like, I don't care who's coming in next. I don't care anything other than what that person is doing now and how I can give attention to what we're doing.
Right.
So that's good. Obviously, that's that area of my life where I need that type of mentality. But like I said, I have a difficult time, at least right now where I'm at professionally and like maturity wise, of transposing that into everything else.
Yeah.
Like, I can't take that type of mentality wherever I go in other avenues, because like even at school, like when I'm working with a student, like obviously I'm giving that student attention, but then there's like, oh, I got to fill out this paperwork and do these lesson plans and grade these papers.
You always have the proverbial map flipping over again and again.
It's constant,
again in your head.
It's constant.
Yep.
And I can't get it to shut off. And like, I think that would be maybe a cry for help publicly, like me, like, hey, if there's anybody that has any strategies on not being so planned and what's next, it would be, if you have any of those strategies, please let me know, because I can't really think of a way to bust out of it. But it's nuanced in the fact that there's benefit to come from that too, though. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
It's terrible. It's not terrible. It's just it's an inconvenience sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like it's almost like you need to, and who knows, I do the same thing, so I'm just spitballing here. But what if you thought about it like how you used to tell me all the time, trust the process.
Yep.
So you have the process in place. You have all the steps. You know you're type A, so you have your schedule, and you have a way to identify when it's time to change task, change gears, and move on to the next task. So trust the process. You have it. Your process doesn't tell you to think. Every step is not telling you to think about the next step. It's telling you to think about that step and then go to the next one. I'm just spitballing. I mean, do you think that would help? Do you think that would work?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of times I notice that I have self-protecting behaviors that I do to try to avoid certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I truly sit back and like psychoanalyze the things that I do and why I do them, one thing that I do all the time is constantly stay busy.
Yeah.
The only time that I'm not busy is when I'm sleeping.
Right.
So trying to catch up on sleep, obviously, and do those sorts of things. So I notice that even when I have the availability, which is rare, but if I have the availability for like downtime per se, I don't spend it very wisely. I actually end up trying to make myself busy.
Right.
The reason I do that is because when I'm not in that type of, or when I am in that type of position where I don't have like a busy schedule, or I'm not like go, 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 and my brain's not on like hyperdrive, I feel like that starts to allow anxiety to creep in because I think about like problems and things that I need to fix and stuff that's going on in my life. And that's why when I was younger, it started in high school, but I used to, like when we talk about mental health and stuff and the past, especially recently, we've talked about it in other episodes. One of the things that I started doing is I had to like fall asleep, like listening to something, not music or white noise or anything like that, because that would just like allow my thoughts to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to create an environment where I couldn't think about anything independently. I would watch TV. So I was like engaged in the TV and not engaged in my own thoughts.
Right.
So when I have downtime, one of the things I do is I think about problems that I have to fix. And it can become entirely overwhelming for me. So one of the strategies that I have read about, and this is an alternative to constantly keeping myself busy and constantly keeping myself going, because the reason I bring this up is I think that that's maybe where some of my lack of ability to stay focused on the here and now comes from,
mm-hmm.
is because I'm constantly trying to keep my brain engaged and busy so that way I don't have to think about things that stress me out, because I have a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress that come from different places in my life. And so one of the strategies that I've read about is, and I haven't done it, like you see these things like, oh, that sounds good on paper, but is it in practicality? Does it actually work? But I think sometimes we're too dismissive of those things and we don't actually try them. So one of the strategies I've read about is to actually write down everything that's bothering you when you go to sleep. So like when you go to bed at night, think of every possible stressor or anxiety inducing event or possibility, like something down the road that you think is going to happen. Like tomorrow you have to have this meeting with your boss, you don't think it's going to go well, whatever. Write all that stuff down on paper. And then once you write all those things down on paper, write down your solution to every one of those. Like, okay, so I have a lot of anxiety because I have a report due for work tomorrow. Okay. What's your solution? Are you going to check it over to make sure it's really good quality before you go to sleep right now? Or is it not done and you have to finish it right now? So you're going to get up and finish it, which probably wouldn't be the case because you probably wouldn't be going to bed. But regardless, write down everything that's bothering you and then all of the ways that you're going to fix them. And the premise behind that is obviously you outline all of your issues and you don't have to worry about fixing them because you already have a plan to fix them.
Right. You've created the solution.
And then henceforth, there's also the things that you can't fix, but you would just write down that that's out of your control and you can't fix it either way. So sitting in bed stressing about it's not going to do you any good.
Right.
Now that I will say, if it's something that is out of your control, I feel like that's kind of a fallacy or a false notion that people try to like perpetrate. Like when you have someone who's stressing about something that they can't control, people always say, well, there's no sense in worrying about it because you can't control it, right? I get that. But for me, I actually stress about those things more because there is no control.
Yeah,
there's nothing that I can do to help that. That's why I stress about them. Like, if you have a death in the family, it's
right.
you could say, oh, well, there's nothing you can do to control that. So you need to like not stress about it. It's like, well, no, that doesn't make it any easier. That makes it worse because there's nothing I can do. I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
That's another character flaw that I have, is I like to be in control of things and feel like I'm in command and that I have the ability to dictate the outcome of the situation. So like the one time or the one area in my life that this manifests all the time is like watching my athletes play sports. Like when I would play sports, I generally didn't get nervous. And even coaching, I didn't really get nervous too much because like in really, really high pressure situations, because I felt like I had some semblance of say or action that could dictate the outcome of the game. Like I'm in control here. I can call this play or put this person in or make some personnel changes, whatever it was. I felt like I was in control. Then, especially playing, obviously you have not full control on team sports, but
You have control of your
yeah, you have
part
a
for
lot,
sure.
exactly. Versus when
And
I go watch my kids play, like I have no control over what they're doing on the field, and it gives me horrible, horrible anxiety. Bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, bases loaded, down 2 runs, and you got one of your athletes up to bat or whatever.
yeah, and you're
Like that drives me insane,
yeah.
and I cannot like wiggle my way out of it. So those are just some of like the day to day things that I feel like I don't know. I need to slow my brain down if I can, but it's hard to do that.
There's we're not the only ones that deal with that. You know what I mean? There's tens of thousands of people that are asking want to ask the same question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's so many people that don't even know that that's the question they want to ask, but they're dealing with the same exact thing. So yeah, if somebody knows the answer to that question,
well, especially because it's worth noting the link for that's not even doing it strong enough. The inevitable paired, like I guess, relationship between your mental state, your social emotional state, and your physical side of things. Like how when you're chronically stressed, you get sick more often and your body wears down. And a lot of times we can just look at stress management as the most important thing that someone needs to take care of.
right?
Whether it's stress, like physical stress that's taxing from work, mental stress, emotional stress. Like there's so many stressors that we combat daily, and some of them are self-inflicted. Like I know a lot of my stress issues are self-inflicted, but that also doesn't mean that I can. I mean, it does mean that I can overcome them, but not as easily. I need to make conscientious steps towards overcoming my mental struggles.
Yeah, I would go out on a limb to say 80-90% of my stress is self-inflicted.
Yes.
And I would also go on a limb and say I probably have the tools in my toolbox right now to fix 40-50% of them.
I would agree with that for myself. I actually had a quote one time that my buddy sent me, and my friend Brian, who was a roommate of mine in college and still a very good friend to this day, he and I share a lot of the same thought processes, like where we struggle with anxiety and stuff in certain areas of our life. And he told me, he sent me this picture one time and it had a quote on it, and I can't remember who said it, but it was like it resonated so deeply with me. It was basically like reality is so much better than what we create in our heads. Like our anxiety creates like a false reality for us.
Like we're better off than what we think we are.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the premise of it.
I would have to agree with that because, like, I don't know. It's a lot of my stresses used to be money related. You know, not to say I'm I overnight became independently wealthy or anything, but it was one of the things that I fixed was worrying about money as much. And I used to stress out about being not being well off or this my situation. And then you look around and you think about, we talked about this a long time ago on the show. Think about when you're stressed out about something, think about the guy in a wheelchair that wants to be able to walk.
Yeah.
And he can't. That's something to stress out about. But then again, is it? Because there's another guy that can't even sit in a wheelchair. There's how bad off are we actually?
No, there's constant levels to thinking about how good your situation is.
Right.
Where you can always create a position that's worse than you. Actually, that's coincidentally enough, another article that I wrote one time was called The Subjectivity of the Happiness Paradigm, where your happiness and your mental state of being happy and likewise being mad is all relative and subjective to your situation. So I think we might have talked about it before on the air, but like someone who like you like, I like to use the phrase hashtag first world problems.
Yes.
When like I complain about something that like, oh shoot, my smartphone doesn't have service. We're so privileged beyond reasonable doubt. Not only the country we live in, but the time period we live in, and you and I both having jobs and being moderately successful, being overwhelmingly, unbelievably successful compared to a lot of the world.
Yeah.
And we have these like hashtag first world problems where we complain
Yeah.
about something little. But this is our life, and that is the degree of suffering that we know.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you go to
a third world country,
yeah, people are eternally happy
mm-hmm.
because they don't have a lot of the problems.
And they don't have the abundance of fast food places. They don't have the abundance of grocery stores
Mm-hmm.
and the all the food readily available like we do. So they're like happy because they don't know any better.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Sometimes I almost feel like sign me up.
Well, and actually, I think that that's a good place to take a commercial break, because when you talk about the mentality and how much better off they are, that's something that I've kind of done in my life. Is I've changed a little bit in regards to how, not only how I live, but like my material goods and all that stuff. I want to explain to you something like kind of like a slow process life change, if you will, because I know last episode we talked about how my mentality has changed in terms of like problem solution stuff. Like I'm trying to be solution oriented. I don't know how this happened, but the past couple of months I've just, everything that's like bad that happens, I'm just like, all right, well, I'm going to fix it. Got to figure out how. Am I going to fix it myself, pay someone to do it, or if I will find a way to fix this.
It will be fixed.
Yeah. So, and stressing about it's not going to do me any good, because to this point in my life, I've lived 32 years and everything that I've worried about in my life has been okay because I'm still here.
Right.
So, but I want to go into a little bit of a detail about how I've tried to scale back on certain things and how I think it's bringing about a little bit more happiness and complacency in my life. So let's go to a quick commercial break and we'll talk more about that when we come back. As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram, and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well. And we are back from our commercial break. All right, Justin, prior to the break, we talked a lot about a little bit of like, I don't want to say mental illness, but some of the mental struggles that we have and things that we go through being the type of people that we are and our personality traits and stuff like that. And I mentioned that one of the things that I've tried to do in my life that helps rid me of anxiety is, I said that I wanted to tell you, one of the things I've done is simplifying my life. Remember a few episodes ago when, probably several now, a dozen or so, when I talked about I wanted to try to simplify certain areas of my life as much as I can.
Yeah, you were talking like your wardrobe.
Yeah, it was wardrobe. And I think that the analogy that I brought up, or the comparison that I wanted to bring up if I didn't, was like SpongeBob. And I remember this one episode of SpongeBob where he goes in his closet and it's the same outfit, like his like shirt and tie and pants or whatever. And they're hanging on hangers and it's like nothing but that. And he's like trying to pick out what to wear. And it's cool because I look at that and I'm like, wow, like think about if I just wore the same thing every day. Like I went to a private school up until 8th grade because the nearest private school that my parents would have sent me to was too far for my brother and I both playing 3 or 4 sports. It was like too much because it was like 45 minutes away. Right. So my parents both work full time. So I went to a private school up until 8th grade. And at the Catholic school, you have like obviously uniforms. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, like I never once growing up as a kid had problems with uniforms, because kids nowadays, like especially at a public school, are like, oh my gosh, uniforms would be the worst thing ever. And like, honestly, like even as a younger kid, I was pretty cognizant of the benefits. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to worry about what you wear. Like I just wear the same thing every day. Like who cares? Like I don't, like I mean, it's not.
It almost eliminates the majority of the cliques in schools.
That's one of the rationales behind it, is that it eliminates kids from getting made fun of, who some kids don't have as much. So like maybe they don't get made fun of as much because they don't have the expensive clothes or whatever. But I talked about simplifying my wardrobe and how it would be so nice if I just wore the same thing every day, like the same stuff, because it eliminates thought. So I've tried to do that with everything. Like I'm very anti-clutter, and I have a lot of obsessive compulsive issues that I go through. And one of them is organization. So I tried to like simplify and eliminate everything in my house that I don't need. Um, so I actually was watching a YouTube video, and I wish that I knew the guy's name, and I should know the guy's name. He is a fitness-based personality or influencer, I guess. I hate that term, but he's like a fitness influencer who was involved in several startup companies, and he's like a millionaire. And now one of the things he does is he talks about his success, like as a millionaire in the fitness industry and stuff. And yeah, gosh, I'm sure that some people will know him if I describe him. He's got longer hair, like shoulder length. Gosh, I wish I knew the dude's name, but it's going to come to me. Anyway, one of the things that he was talking about, because he does a lot of videos on success and finance and stuff,
Yeah.
not just fitness. Well, he said that one of the things he did that made him super, super successful was eating the same diet.
Mm-hmm.
He said he eats the same thing every single day. And the reason he does that is because, in his estimation, it eliminates decisions that he has to make. And basically what he says is, especially as someone who owns several businesses, as a millionaire, he's busy all the time and his life is constantly filled with decisions. So the less amount of decisions he has to make, the more time he has and the less stress he has. So that's something that he can eliminate. I don't have to make the decision on what I have to eat today because I know I eat the same stuff every single day. It doesn't matter.
Could you imagine how much time you save in your life if we ever like only ate the exact same food every single day?
Well, and that was the other benefit there. The other cog in that was, and I don't have to spend time preparing food.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, but
you get to make it, but you don't have to. You get to be at a point where it's so brainless.
Dude, that's like me with my meal prep. Like when I am like, especially on a contest diet where everything's measured and stuff, like it seems very, very tedious, but you create a system where I know these meals I prep before work, these 2 meals I finish after work, or these are shakes, like, or I could do these ones the night before. You get into such a routine that it saves you so much time.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost to the point where you could prep the meal faster than you could going through a drive-through even.
Yeah.
So there's like strategy at play there. So like I kind of look at that as a way of like cutting corners in life.
Right.
Like, how can I simplify things so I have to make less decisions and spend less time doing things? So like another strategy that I do that's kind of similar, I guess, is I talk on the phone while I'm in the car.
Right.
Not for leisure or casually, but for business. Yeah, like all the phone calls I got to make. So like even if I have text messages that, like, say for example, I get a text message and they ask me about like coaching or something, like what services do you offer? I could text that person back, but it's going to take me about 5 minutes to lay it out all in a text.
Right.
Not that 5 minutes is that big of a deal, but those 5 minutes obviously accumulate in your benefit or against you, depending on how strategic you are with your time management. But I think, well, I got to be driving eventually anyway, so why don't I just talk it over on the phone with them?
Right.
So I'll text that person back. I'll call you after work at this time if you're available. Bye. And then I call them, and then it usually solves that issue. Now, the one downside to that is that I actually, and God, I'm bad at this, is I try to call everybody back, but I can't.
Right, because you end up with more people to call back than there is time to make phone calls.
So then some of those phone calls get pushed back
to the next day or whatever.
That's just a unique way that I found helps me cut corners, so to speak. So maybe that could be like a little bit of a homework assignment for you and I, is try to identify more ways to cut corners. But I don't know if I really want to use that phrase.
I was just getting ready to say, I don't like the phrase cut corners. I understand what you're saying. Like, I get it.
It sounds like shortcut or cheating the process,
right?
So to speak.
Trim the fat.
Yeah. How can we trim the fat or throw things overboard so the boat isn't as heavy? Like what can I throw overboard that I don't need in my life?
How can we simplify our process?
Like, remember, gosh, I wish I knew specifics, but remember we had that one episode where we talked about like getting rid of things and like eliminating certain things from our life, and like we talked the other episode about what was the phrase that we coined, like time killers.
No.
Productivity killers. That was it. Productivity killers. Like things that kill. And I actually went on and I looked at the screen time of my Instagram. Holy cow, dude.
I agree. I know.
I don't remember what the figure was because I tried to erase it from my mind, but I was embarrassed.
Yeah, my phone I get it every week. And mine's still extremely high. But I spend a lot of my time on my phone. with emails and phone calls and texting, employees and coworkers and such. Um, it told me on Friday that I spent 9 hours on my phone.
Wow.
Average 9 hours. I think it said average of 9 hours a day on my phone.
Well, and like I've talked to my business coach about this stuff and about like time management.
Yeah.
Obviously. And you just think like how many activities are you doing in a day to day that are unproductive?
Yeah, right.
And not really conducive to like much of anything.
Scrolling or watching TV.
And
or
one of the things that he says, my coach, is he talks about how it's always systems. Like the ideas, the passions, like the content is there. It's just people lack systems. They lack a profitable system that's going to help them be successful.
Right.
So like I look at my life as being analogous to a system. Like if I'm getting food ready, if it's taking me 3 hours to meal prep, that's an inefficient system. How do I fix the system?
Right.
So I think that that's one thing that we could take away from today's episode is look at your day-to-day systems and how can you trim the fat, so to speak. Like whether it's have less items in your house, simplify your wardrobe, come up with a meal plan that's easier to prep for you. I have this one really, really strange habit is when I moved a year ago, there are several ways to get to my house. And all of those paths are probably within 5 minutes of one another. And I would like mentally need a switch up where some nights I would take this road, some nights I would take that road. And then I started to think, this one way out of the 3 or 4, whatever, how many different routes I can take, the one way is probably about 2 minutes faster than all of them. And if I spend an extra 2 minutes driving, doesn't seem like a big deal, right? But then if I spend an extra 2 minutes on my phone in the bathroom, now I'm at 4 minutes. And if I spend an extra 2 minutes here and there and everywhere, those 2 minutes accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And it's unbelievable how much time that you lose. So like, I want to revisit this because this is definitely something that I've used is looking at like the conversation thing. And we talked about setting, I think it was 75% or 25% less time allocated towards tasks. Like if you have a task that you think is going to take an hour, cut that by 25% and schedule 45 minutes for it. Because you're going to be able to do it at an expedited rate.
Yeah, because we are naturally going to overshoot what it takes because we're trying to plan and fit everything in.
And one of the things that I came up, or I don't want to say I came up with, that I have brought into my life that I read about, and this is like life changing, is and I don't think I shared this because I've only started doing it recently. I don't even think it's been a full week, but I read somewhere about like, because I'm constantly trying to improve myself, hence the point of this podcast. I read this thing that said, it was talking about time management and productivity. And I wish that I could give credit to who said this, but I can't remember. Obviously, just like everything on this podcast, I keep coming up with, or not, remembering all these great ideas and quotes and stuff, and I can't remember who said them. It was, whenever you're looking at a task, like, because you ever like sit on the couch and you have a million things to do, and it's so overwhelming, you just want to sit on the couch because you don't even know where to start.
Right, yeah, you're like just blah.
So one of the strategies for productivity that I read the other day said that if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. So if ever you come across something in your life that you have to do, like, oh, I got to remember to
do the dishes.
Yeah, I have to remember to go to the grocery store after work. I got to remember to do the dishes. Oh, shoot, I got to text Mike back. I forgot to text him. Oh, I got to send this email. If you ever the minute you think of something, if it's going to take less than 2 minutes, do it right now. Go right now and do it. I have used that strategy, and my communication has been so much better in texting people back. Because like sometimes, full disclosure here and completely outing myself, there will be times where I will read text messages from people and just say, I'll respond later. And I don't really have a reason for not responding right there. Like, obviously, I'm a little bit busy.
Right.
But now I say, if it's going to be a less than a 2 minute response, I'm texting back right now.
Get it done.
Yep. Absolutely.
I kind of like that, though. I mean, because it's essentially, I'm guessing what it's doing for you is it's freeing you up from ever having to think about that task again.
Yes.
So the more we put it off, the more time we spend thinking about we didn't do it or we need to get it done. Eventually, you're going to spend more time thinking about doing it than it takes to get it done.
It's procrastination.
Yeah,
and then it compounds
to
where you put it off and put things off, and not only do you have to do those things, but then you have to do more things.
Right.
And it creates a hill that's unscalable.
I like it.
Yeah, so that maybe that could be a good place to end it, and like give a strategy for yourself. And because I've been doing this, and I think about this like, God, literally every second. Like every time I'm thinking about something I got to do, I always ask myself, 2 minutes or less? Now it's going to take more than, less than 2 minutes? Yeah, I can throw the laundry in less than 2 minutes. I'm going to go do that real quick.
Yeah, get it done.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yep.
So if you are thinking of all these things that you need to do throughout your day, if you have something pop in your head that's going to take you less than 2 minutes to do it right away without waiting. That would be a great place to start for some more productivity, I think.
That's gonna solve a lot of problems for me. I know that.
That definitely has for me.
I can already think about like 7 things last week I didn't do that would have taken 2 minutes or less.
Yep, absolutely. So that's a good place to end it, I think. Make sure you guys, if you have something that you come across that's 2 minutes or less, just be sure to get it done, and you'll be a lot more productive and a lot happier because of it.
Yep.
So with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 151. As always, we appreciate your listenership, and we look forward to hearing back from you guys next week. Unbreakable, unstoppable, I'm pushed to the edge.